It begins with a hush, a silence so deep it seems to breathe with the stone of the room itself. You find yourself standing in a forgotten library where the air is thick with dust and the dust itself feels older than memory. A single candle flickers against walls lined with shelves, each shelf bent beneath the weight of books that have not been touched in centuries. The light trembles across bindings, cracked like desert soil. The scent is ancient, parchment smoke and something faintly metallic like the taste of rain on stone. And there, on a table at the center of the room, rests the atlas. Its cover is blackened at the edges as if once kissed by fire. Its leather has grown brittle, fragile as the skin of an autumn leaf. When opened, its pages sigh softly, releasing the faintest breath of centuries, an echo of time itself. Within, lines of ink ripple like shadows, tracing lands that no longer exist. Mountains rise where none are known. Rivers flow across plains that have since dried into desert. Cities shimmer faintly in regions marked today as emptiness. It is an atlas veiled in ashes, a map of a world rewritten. It is said that every map is a prayer, a plea for the world to remain fixed, to remain knowable, to remain faithful to the hand that drew it. But the lines here betray a different intention. They bend and shift as though alive, refusing the certainty we seek. The ink seems to ripple like water in moonlight, whispering that what we think we know is only one layer upon many. Some have called such maps errors, the mistakes of cartographers who drew from rumor and dream. Yet others believe they were not mistakes at all, but sacred symbols, veiled markers of truths too dangerous or too wondrous to endure the daylight. In forgotten corners of Europe, whispers still surface of a land called Tartaria, a kingdom vast, its boundaries stretching like shadow across the steppes, its people said to wield knowledge beyond measure. Old maps marked it with pride, vast empires colored in muted tones, towers reaching the clouds, rivers feeding endless cities. Yet slowly, mysteriously, the name faded. Like smoke, it drifted from the parchment. Like a candle flame, it vanished. By the modern age, it was gone, erased not just from the page, but from memory itself. Why do some names survive while others dissolve into silence? Perhaps it is convenience or conquest or the slow erosion of forgetting. Or perhaps there are powers that cannot be remembered, secrets that must remain buried beneath the dust. You turn another page. The candle trembles. The map now shows a chain of mountains in the heart of Asia, peaks taller than any we know today. Tiny drawings of towers dot their ridges, towers said to touch the heavens. But on today's maps, those mountains do not exist. They have melted into plain, into nothing. How can a mountain vanish? How can stone itself be rewritten? Some say it was conquest, that rulers destroyed what they could not claim, erasing names from charts as they burned the cities from which those names were born. Others whisper of cataclysms, storms of fire, floods of silence that washed away whole landscapes, leaving only faint traces on maps drawn before the fall. And still others believe something stranger, that there are layers of the world, folded one atop the other like veils, and only at certain times, through certain eyes, do we glimpse the other face of the earth. The atlas breathes these contradictions into the room, and the silence thickens. You imagine the cartographer, quill in hand, ink staining his fingers, staring into candlelight as he copies lines whispered by travelers who swore they saw cities of glass, towers of gold, bridges that spanned horizons. Perhaps he drew from stories told by pilgrims returning from deserts where bones glowed in the sand, or from sailors who drifted upon rivers that appeared for a season, then vanished into dust. And perhaps he knew that what he drew would not be believed. Still he drew. Still he left the map behind for someone like you centuries later to wonder. It is said that memory is not only of the mind but of the land. That soil remembers footsteps, that rivers remember prayers, that stones themselves carry echoes of voices long faded. If this is true, then perhaps the atlas is a conversation with the land itself, a record not of geography, but of remembrance. Some scholars insist that Tartaria never existed. They dismiss the maps as curiosities, mistakes. They speak with the certainty of the daylight world, where boundaries are clear and names are written in bold ink. Yet in the soft hours of night, when certainty grows thin, other voices are heard. Voices that say once there was more. Once the earth was veined with cities that pulsed with light. Once towers rose to greet the stars. Once knowledge flowed like rivers across the steppes. And then, as if by decree, it ended. Perhaps the atlas is the only witness, A witness blackened by fire, pages veiled in ash, whispering in silence what cannot be spoken aloud. You close your eyes for a moment. You imagine standing upon one of those forgotten rivers, moonlight shimmering across its current. You imagine walking the streets of a city that is no longer named, the cobblestones warm beneath your feet, the air filled with a language now dissolved into silence. You imagine gazing up at a tower whose tip glitters with starlight, a tower aligned with constellations that no longer match the sky above us. And you wonder, is this imagining or remembering? For dreams too are maps, maps of the unseen, maps of the spirit, maps that guide us not across land but through the secret chambers of time. Perhaps the atlas is a dream given shape in ink, a dream left for those who listen between the lines. The candle wavers again. A page curls as if stirred by a breath that is not yours. The lines upon it shimmer faintly, and for a moment you think you glimpse motion. A city rising, a river flowing, a tower stretching higher and higher into the clouds. But then it is gone. The lines are still. The page is quiet. Only the faint scent of ash remains. Whispers tell us that what is erased is not truly gone. That every name once spoken lingers in the air, waiting for someone to breathe it again. That every place once walked remains in the memory of the earth. The atlas rests before you, silent now, its secrets folded back into shadow. You close it gently and the hush of the library returns deeper than before. Outside the window, night presses against the glass and the stars seem nearer, as though leaning in to listen. Perhaps the maps were never meant to be found. Perhaps they were drawn only to remind us of the fragility of knowing, the thin veil between what is remembered and what is lost. Perhaps they were prayers, prayers for a world that slipped away, prayers for those who would wander in the silence after. You rise from the table, the candle guttering low. The atlas remains, veiled in ashes, veiled in memory. As you step into the quiet corridor, you carry with you not certainty but wonder. And in that wonder there is peace, for some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. It begins with the sound of wind, a long, unbroken breath moving across the empty steps, whispering through grasses that sway like oceans of silence. The night stretches wide, a black dome pierced with stars, each one trembling in its distance. The earth beneath is vast, bare, unmarked, yet the air holds a weight as though remembering. It is said that where there is nothing, there was once everything. And so we walk into the emptiness, guided by the hush of the wind, listening to the silence as if it were a voice. The grasses bend, the horizon shivers, and in the faintest gleam of moonlight, shadows begin to gather. Not solid shadows, but impressions as if the earth itself were dreaming aloud. There, a wall. There, a tower. There, the faint arc of an archway that does not exist except in the memory of stone. Once this place was a capital, a city of white stone and golden spires, a city whose towers pierced the sky, where moonlight fell not upon emptiness, but upon avenues alive with footsteps. Legends speak of streets paved in marble that glowed silver beneath the stars, of gardens where fountains whispered like hidden choirs, of great halls lit not by fire, but by the breath of the moon itself. Its arches were said to follow the constellations, each curve aligned with the great spirals of the heavens, so that those who passed beneath felt themselves stepping not only through stone, but through the very order of the cosmos. But tonight all that remains is silence. The city is gone. Its traces melted into the soil, swallowed by time, dissolved into earth and air. Whispers tell us that it did not fall to conquest. No sword cut down its walls, no flame devoured its spires. Instead, it was said to have simply vanished, as if the earth opened its mouth and drew the city into its depths, as if stone and dream alike sank beneath the weight of silence. Some say it slipped into another layer of the world, a mirror realm folded just beyond sight. Others believe it chose to fade, to return to the stillness from which it was born. And yet, when the moon is full, when the wind stills, and when one listens not with the ears but with the breath, the city returns. It rises like mist, outlines shimmering where none should be. Towers shimmer faintly in the night air, as though woven of silver dust. Bridges of light arch across nothingness, leading only into shadow. For a moment, only a moment, the city stands again. Not solid, but luminous, a dream suspended between presence and absence. It is said that those who wander the steps sometimes stumble upon its echo. They hear footsteps beside them, though the grasses are empty. They see lantern light flicker where no lantern burns. They feel beneath their souls the firmness of stone where only soil should be. Some fall to their knees in awe. Others turn away, trembling, unwilling to witness what memory preserves. But if you remain, if you breathe deeply into the silence, the city begins to unfurl itself. You walk an avenue that glows faintly as though dusted with moonlit ash. The walls on either side are tall and pale, adorned with carvings so weathered they seem to be dissolving even as you gaze upon them. Faces of forgotten rulers, celestial symbols spiraled like galaxies, hands clasped in prayer. The air hums with stillness, a stillness so deep it feels alive. Ahead, a great hall rises, its roof shimmering with ghostly fire. This was said to be the Palace of the Moon, its chambers lit by a glow that waxed and waned with the lunar tides. Inside, arches curve upward like frozen waves, each one etched with constellations. When the moon reached its zenith, the light poured through a central dome, striking the floor with such precision that the entire chamber became a map of the heavens. To stand there was to stand inside the sky itself. But now the hall is not stone. It is only impression. A suggestion of walls, a shadow of arches. When you move closer, the light ripples and dissolves, as if the dream were losing patience. The city withdraws again, folding back into absence. The towers fade into mist. The avenues return to grass. The silence grows heavy once more. Perhaps the city was never meant to remain. Perhaps it was always of moonlight, belonging to the hours when the world is soft and minds drift toward sleep. Its grandeur was never a thing to endure the cruelty of daylight, but a vision meant only for those who enter silence. Like a reflection on water, it could shimmer, but never be grasped. In forgotten chronicles, faint mentions survive. Travelers spoke of a place where the stars seemed closer, where nights themselves glowed brighter, where time felt slower, as though the city were suspended between the earth and the heavens. But even these mentions are rare, like fragments of a dream scribbled hastily upon waking. Soon even the name dissolved, leaving only whispers of a city that sank beneath the moonlight. And so we return to the steppe, to the grasses, to the wind. The silence presses close, yet it does not feel empty. It feels full, full of absence, full of memory. Every rustle of grass is like the echo of footsteps. Every shadow across the plain is like the ghost of a wall. The city is gone, and yet it lingers, not in stone, but in the breath of the earth itself. Some believe it will rise again. Not in permanence, not in stone, but as vision, appearing when the world grows quiet enough to remember. Others believe it never sank at all, that we are the ones who drifted away, that our eyes lost the ability to see what is still there. Perhaps the truth does not matter. For as we walk beneath the starlit sky, as the grasses sway like waves upon an ocean of silence, we sense that the city is near, not to be touched, not to be claimed, but to be remembered. And memory, after all, is its own kind of existence. The moonlight deepens. The horizon softens. The city flickers once more, faint as breath upon glass, then fades again into the folds of night. You close your eyes, and in the darkness you carry it with you, not in certainty, but in wonder. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it exists only as a reminder that some grandeur is too delicate for permanence, too sacred for the weight of day. The wind sighs, the grasses whisper, and the steps return to silence. And in that silence the city lingers, forever absent, forever remembered, sinking once more beneath the moonlight. It begins in a cloister, where silence itself feels carved into stone. The walls are weathered, worn by centuries of breath and wind, their surfaces etched with faint spirals of moss and dust. Lantern light flickers against the arches, trembling softly like a heartbeat, and in the center of the sacred hush there rests a bell, vast, unmoving, veiled in shadow. The bronze of its body has grown dark with age. Its surface is not smooth but rippled with time, as though the centuries themselves had touched it with gentle fingers. Around its rim are engravings, suns with rays that spiral outward, moons cupped like cradles, stars carved as faint echoes of light. Each symbol seems less like ornament, more like memory. The bell does not ring, yet in its silence it hums, a vibration unspoken, felt not with ears but with breath. It is said that this bell was not made for men. It was cast not for the gathering of monks nor to call the faithful to prayer. Its resonance was meant for the heavens. When struck, its sound would not fade into earthly valleys but rise, climbing past cloud and storm, through the layers of night, until it reached the stars themselves. Some believe it was a timekeeper, marking not the hours of the day but the hidden cycles of the cosmos, moments when the earth exhaled in rhythm with the heavens. Others whisper it was a transmitter, a voice of empires long vanished, sending signals into the silence above. Messages not meant for human ears but for something older, something listening among the constellations. And still others say it was a relic of worship, a bridge of sound between the dust of men and the fire of the divine. We approach it slowly, as one would approach a shrine. The air grows heavier as though holding its breath. You reach out a hand and touch the bronze. It is cool, yet it carries a subtle warmth like stone touched by moonlight. Beneath your fingertips you trace the spirals, the suns, the moons. The engravings are shallow, yet each feels infinite, like doorways into another rhythm of time. Imagine for a moment the sound. A single strike of the bell, low and deep, not harsh but resonant, swelling outward like a tide of breath. It rolls through the cloister, then lifts into the night sky. The air vibrates, the stars tremble. The sound carries across valleys and mountains, across oceans of silence, rising higher and higher until it disappears from our hearing. And yet, somewhere beyond the veil of our senses, it continues, still climbing, still calling until it reaches the listening stars. Whispers tell us that when the bell sang, the night itself changed. Animals grew still, flames burned taller. The sky seemed closer, as though leaning in to listen. Some spoke of constellations shifting faintly, of stars that flickered brighter, of shadows bending toward the sound. Whether true or imagined, those who heard the bell's voice swore they never forgot. It became not sound but imprint, a memory woven into the rhythm of their very breath. Scholars, of course, debate. They argue over fragments of scrolls, faded mentions in chronicles, uncertain inscriptions. One calls it myth, another insists it was nothing more than a ceremonial chime. Yet there are details, subtle but persistent, that resist dismissal. Drawings of bells vast enough to rival towers. Records of vibrations that could be felt leagues away. Stories of nights when voices rose in harmony with a single bronze note. In forgotten manuscripts, faint lines describe the bell as a heart of silence and a mirror to the heavens. One passage speaks of the stars bending low to listen, as though remembering their own birth. Another warns that the bell was to be rung sparingly, for its sound carried further than men could know. Was this caution against superstition, or a memory of power too great to be held lightly? It is said the bell last sang centuries ago. One final toll, reverberating through mountains, shaking stones from their roots. Afterward, silence. Perhaps it cracked, though no fracture is seen. Perhaps the order to silence it was given, its sound deemed dangerous or forbidden. Or perhaps the stars themselves ceased to listen, turning their faces away, leaving the bell to slumber in stillness. Yet here it remains. Silent, yes, but not forgotten. Its presence is not emptiness, but fullness. A silence so deep it contains the memory of sound. Some nights, it is said, those who sleep near the cloister dream of a low resonance, a note that vibrates in their chest, a sound without beginning or end. They wake with tears on their cheeks, unable to explain, only whispering that they heard the voice of something greater than silence. Imagine standing here on a night-long past when the bell was alive, the cloister filled with monks, each carrying a torch that flickered against the carved stone, the air thick with incense, with chant, with prayer. And then the strike, bronze against bronze, metal awakening with a deep rolling voice. The torches tremble, the chants falter. All breath pauses as the sound unfurls. The note climbs, it spreads, it stretches until the very fabric of night seems to part. The stars above, marked by the moon, shimmer faintly, as though answering. And perhaps they did. Perhaps the bell was never a call to heaven, but a reply, an echo of the universe's own song, struck into matter by human hands. For what is bronze but earth and fire made into resonance? What is sound but breath given shape? Perhaps when the bell sang, it did not speak to the stars at all. Perhaps it reminded us that we too are starlight, shaped into flesh, longing for our own forgotten harmony. The thought lingers. You touch the bell again, its cool surface grounding you in the present. The engravings shimmer faintly in the candlelight, and for an instant you imagine they move. The spirals turn, the suns glow, the moons wax and wane across the bronze. You close your eyes, and in the silence you hear it, faint, distant but certain, a low note that vibrates in your chest, soft as a heartbeat, deep as eternity. But when your eyes open, the cloister is quiet. The bell is still. The silence is whole again. Perhaps it was never meant to ring forever. Perhaps it was always meant to fall silent, leaving us to wonder, to imagine, to listen in stillness for echoes that no longer come. Beneath the silence, there is reverence. Not for certainty, but for mystery. Not for sound, but for the memory of sound. As you step back into the cloister's shadowed corridors, the bell remains behind, veiled in quiet, its voice folded into the stars, and you carry with you a single, lingering thought that perhaps the stars still remember. And perhaps in the deep hours of night, when silence is full and breath is slow, they are still listening. It rises out of the earth like a memory that refuses to fade. Half buried by soil and time, half consumed by moss and grass, there stands an archway, lonely, vast, and strange. No wall surrounds it, no path leads to it. It is a gate without a door, a threshold without a passage. Its weathered stones frame nothing but the shifting sky, where wind drifts like a wandering spirit, and clouds slide in silence across the horizon. It is said this gate is older than memory itself, older than the chronicles that dared to name kings, older than the ruins that scatter across deserts and mountains. Some whisper it was built before the first cities, before even the first word was spoken aloud. Others believe it was never built at all, but placed like a marker or a reminder, by hands not our own, belonging to a time beyond human reckoning. Standing before it, you feel its stillness. The stones are rough, worn by centuries of breath and weather. Faint spirals are carved along its edges, some so eroded they dissolve into dust beneath the gaze. Symbols no one has yet deciphered, though many have tried. Circles within circles, stars set within spirals, lines that curve as though tracing the rhythm of unseen tides. When the light is soft at dusk or dawn, the carvings seem to shimmer, not as decoration but as invitation. Yet the gate opens to nothing. No chamber lies beyond it. No courtyard, no sanctuary, no world of men, only air, only the passing clouds and the slow breath of the wind. It is said those who step beneath its archway sometimes feel a shiver move through them, as though they have passed through a veil too delicate for the eye to see. Some speak of dizziness, a sudden rush of silence deeper than silence itself. Others say they feel lighter, as if their bodies were no longer tethered entirely to the earth. And a few, rare, quiet, often trembling, swear that for a moment they glimpsed another world. A vastness marked not by soil and stone, but by light and shadow, by structures that seemed to breathe, by horizons that shimmered like water caught in eternal twilight. But when they turn back, the gate is the same. Stone, moss, sky. Only the silence lingers, pressing gently against the skin, reminding them of something half-remembered. Scholars have circled this archway for centuries. Some argue it was once part of a larger temple, its stones all since swallowed by earth. Others insist it was no more than a ceremonial entrance, meant to guide ritual processions into spaces long vanished. A few have gone further, whispering of forgotten technologies, of instruments hidden within stone that could open pathways we have since forgotten how to walk. But none of these explanations sit easily. For if it were temple, where are the walls? If it were mere symbol, why does its silence hum so deeply within the chest of those who stand before it? And if it were once a doorway, where does it lead now, when nothing lies beyond it but sky? It is said that thresholds are sacred. They are not destinations but pauses, not endings but the breath held between one step and the next. To stand at a threshold is to stand between worlds, the one behind you and the one ahead not yet entered. Perhaps that is why the gate endures, not as passage but as reminder. A monument not to where we go, but to the silence we must pass through to arrive there. At night, when the moon hangs low and the grasses whisper in the dark, the gate is said to glow faintly. A soft sheen, as though its stones remember the touch of starlight more keenly than the earth around them. Travelers who camp nearby speak of hearing tones, deep, low, like the ringing of a hidden bell. Though no wind stirs, no instrument is struck. Some wake from dreams with tears on their cheeks, unable to describe what they have seen, only murmuring that they had stepped through the arch, into somewhere vast, somewhere veiled in light, and yet, in the daylight it is still only stone. Stone and silence and the ache of mystery. You move closer. The arch towers overhead, its curve elegant even in ruin. You place a hand upon the stone. It is rough, cold, but there is something beneath the surface, some hum of presence too subtle to name. You breathe deeply, and for a moment the world seems to pause. The grasses grow still, the air holds its breath, the silence gathers like a tide. You take one step forward, then another, until you are standing within the frame of the gate. Nothing changes, and yet everything does. The air feels different, denser, quieter. Your heartbeat slows as though syncing with something larger, more ancient. The light seems to soften, blurring the edges of the world. You look forward, and the horizon stretches out endlessly, the sky vast, the clouds drifting, and yet you feel that you are not simply standing upon the earth, but upon the edge of something unseen. It is said that every journey begins not with the first step, but with the pause before it. Perhaps the gate was never meant to open. Perhaps it was never meant to lead anywhere at all. Perhaps it was built to remind us of the sacredness of thresholds themselves, the moments when we linger at the edge of what is known, gazing into what cannot yet be named. Whispers tell us that the gate was once called the mouth of silence, that those who entered through it in ancient times were not leaving one world for another, but surrendering themselves to the stillness between worlds. Pilgrims walked beneath it not to arrive, but to dissolve for a moment into the breath of silence itself. And so the gate remains, half buried, half forgotten, half remembered. Neither alive nor dead, neither ruin nor relic, simply there. A stone arch against the sky, framing only clouds and wind. As night deepens, stars gather above it, and for an instant, it seems less like stone and more like sky itself has been carved into shape. The constellations hover through its frame, and you cannot help but feel the gate has always been watching them, measuring, listening, waiting. Perhaps it is a symbol. Perhaps it is a memory. Perhaps it is a door that no longer opens, or perhaps quietly, softly. It was never meant to lead us outward at all, but inward, to remind us of the silence within ourselves, the thresholds we carry in the chambers of our own breath. You step back. The grasses whisper again. But the air grows lighter. The hum fades. The gate stands as it has always stood, veiled by time, watched only by the stars. And you leave with the quiet ache of an unfinished journey, a passage unwalked. The hush of night presses close. The threshold dissolves into the dark, and the gate, eternal, silent, unseen, remains. There are places we speak of often, cities carved into stone, temples crowned with towers, rivers whose names echo across maps, and then there are places never spoken of, not because they are forgotten, but because they live only in silence, hidden, veiled, unreachable except by dream. It is said that in the center of silence lies a library no hand has opened for centuries, a library without name, without records, without guardians, save for the dust that clings to its breath. We begin in darkness. The air is cool, heavy with age. The silence is not empty but thick, almost alive. Ahead of you stretches a hall, and upon its walls lean shelves older than memory. Their wood is blackened, their corners softened by centuries. The floor is littered with fragments, tiny scraps of paper, grains of parchment, the brittle remains of words that once were whole. A faint light filters through cracks in the stone above. Moonlight, perhaps, or perhaps something softer, stranger. It drifts downward like mist, catching the dust in slow spirals so that the very air seems made of ash and memory. Each mote glows, then vanishes as though echoing the life of a single word, spoken once, lost forever. Upon the shelves lie books, hundreds, thousands more than the eye can count. Their bindings crumble at a glance. Many are little more than lumps of paper and thread collapsed inward like tired lungs. Some still cling to shape, their spines etched faintly with symbols no tongue now knows how to pronounce. And scattered among them are scrolls rolled tight, sealed with wax that has long since cracked, their edges curled and yellowed, their ink faded into strokes of shadow. It is said this library contains the records of a people erased, their philosophies, their inventions, their hidden power, all of it written here not to be shared, but to be preserved in silence. Some claim these shelves hold diagrams of machines that could summon light from air, rivers of knowledge about the body and the spirit, maps of stars that no longer burn in our sky. Others whisper of songs, notes inscribed in symbols too strange for us, that when spoken aloud could open doors long closed, but the words resist us. Every attempt to read them dissolves into confusion. Letters change shape as eyes linger on them. Sentences shift, blur, collapse. What one reader swears is a prayer, another insists is a record of laws. What one scholar calls invention, another declares is myth. The ink itself seems alive, unwilling to surrender its meaning. As though the knowledge here does not wish to be spoken but only remembered. Step slowly into the corridor. The shelves lean inward as though listening. A draft stirs, carrying with it the faint sound of pages turning, not by hand but by time itself. You reach for a book and it collapses into dust beneath your touch. Another, its spine cracked, falls open to reveal words so faint they seem written in breath. You lean closer and for a moment, only a moment, you sense understanding. A phrase, an image, something that stirs recognition deep within your chest. But then the letters scatter, the page shivers, and the meaning slips away, leaving only silence. It is said that each page turned here is like the intake of a breath that will never be spoken aloud. The words rise, they exist for a heartbeat, and then they dissolve back into silence. Perhaps that is the true nature of this place, not to be read, but to remind us of the fragility of knowledge, of the way meaning slips through fingers like sand. Whispers tell us that once, this library was tended by keepers who did not write but breathed. They would inhale the words of the page, drawing them into memory, so that even when the parchment crumbled, the knowledge lived on within their silence. To learn was not to read but to breathe. To exhale was to pass the knowledge to another. And so the library was alive, not in ink but in breath. But when the keepers faded, the knowledge returned to dust. And now only silence remains. You wander further. The shelves twist into labyrinths. Corridors double back upon themselves. Doors lead only into more shelves, more dust, more drifting fragments of ash. Somewhere far within you find a chamber with a single table. Upon it lies an open book larger than any you have seen. Its pages are gray, its letters carved as though by chisel. They glow faintly in the dim light, not bright but pulsing, like the embers of a dying fire. You lean over it, your breath slow, your hand trembling as you trace the first line. And as you do, you feel something stir. Not understanding, not clarity, but recognition. A deep ache, as though the words are not telling you something new, but reminding you of something you once knew and forgot. A truth carried in your own breath, hidden beneath years of silence. You close your eyes and the ache grows softer until it feels almost like peace. When you open them, the letters have faded. The page is blank. Perhaps the knowledge was never meant to be kept in books. Perhaps these shelves were always meant to decay. Perhaps the library exists only as a reminder that what is written is temporary, but what is breathed, what is remembered in silence, cannot be erased. In forgotten traditions, it is said that dust is not death but transformation. Every word that crumbles into powder here does not vanish. It returns to the air, to the breath, to the silence. When you inhale, you carry fragments of ancient voices, the faintest traces of truths once spoken. They linger in you, unseen, until they are ready to rise again. And so you sit in stillness. The shelves surround you, vast and endless. The dust drifts like starlight. The silence presses, yet it is not heavy. It is full. Full of what was, full of what waits, full of what may yet return. You close your eyes and you feel it. A presence not in words but in breath. Perhaps the library is not lost. Perhaps it still waits, not in books, not in scrolls, but in the dream of those who pause long enough to listen. Perhaps knowledge itself is not gone, but veiled, waiting to be dreamed back into life. The silence deepens. The dust swirls. The shelves lean closer, and you, seated at the center of it all, breathe slowly. Each breath an echo of pages turned. Each exhale a remembrance of words not spoken, but still alive. And when you rise to leave, the library remains behind. Not as ruin, not as ash, but as presence. Its silence walks with you, soft as shadow, patient as stone. For somewhere in the hush of night, knowledge still waits. Not to be read, not to be spoken, but to be remembered in breath and dust. Across the plain where the horizon stretches like an endless breath, there rise towers too ancient to name. They do not gleam like the cities of men, nor do they crumble like ruins long abandoned. They stand, solemn, vast, unmoving, as though they were not made but born. Their stone is dark, veined with faint glimmers that catch the light of sun by day and stars by night. Moss gathers at their roots, shadows climb their sides, and yet they seem untouched by time, waiting as though time itself bends around them. It is said these towers were not built. They were grown, drawn upward from the earth as a tree rises from seed, shaped not by hammer and chisel but by forces unseen, forces older than our own memory. Some whisper they were planted by the sky itself, placed where the earth could reach upward to meet the constellations. Others insist they were coaxed into being by hands that knew the hidden rhythms of stone, hands that could speak to the earth until it obeyed, until it rose. Step closer, and their surfaces speak. Not with voice, but with carving. Symbols are etched across their breadth, spirals and lines, suns that radiate outward, storms caught in curling arcs. Some are shallow, some so deep they form channels, grooves through which rain still runs. To trace them with your fingertips is to follow a language not of words, but of weather. Each mark seems to echo lightning, to recall the breath of storms long past. At dusk, when the sun lowers and the first stars flicker awake, the towers change. Their edges glow faintly, as though they are mirrors waiting for night to arrive. And when the constellations crown the heavens, the towers seem to align, their lines matching the stars above with a precision that humbles every thought of accident. To stand at their base and look upward is to see stone rise into starlight, as though one were simply the reflection of the other. It is said these towers did not merely watch the sky, they drew it down. They pulled into themselves the breath of the heavens, the fire of lightning, the song of wind, the silent pulse of the stars. And in their hollow cores that energy gathered, swirled, and spread. Some believe they were protectors, shaping the storm so they spared the plains, turning destruction into renewal. Others whisper they were weapons, capable of releasing what they gathered in sudden silent bursts that could unmake stone, silent cities, and scatter armies. Legends tell of nights when the towers sang, not with music but with resonance, a low vibration that rippled through the air, felt more in the bones than in the ear. Travelers spoke of standing miles away and sensing the ground itself hum, a sound that stretched from the roots of the earth into the chambers of the sky. The stars above, some swore, burned brighter in reply as though the heavens themselves were answering. But today, the towers are silent. No hum, no vibration, no breath of storm gathered in their heights. Moss covers their bases, shadow fills their carvings. They wait, patient, unmoved, as though silence is itself part of their ritual. We walk slowly around them step by step. The air at their base feels different, denser, as though carrying a charge long since hidden. You lay a hand against the stone and it is cool yet not lifeless. Beneath the surface is a stillness too deep to be called empty. It is the stillness of waiting. The stillness of something that could move but chooses not to. It is said that in forgotten times entire ceremonies were held here. Pilgrims came not to worship, but to align themselves, standing at the base of the towers until their own breath slowed to match the rhythm of stone and star. Some say that during storms the towers shone with veins of light, the energy coursing through their carved spirals as though through veins of a living body. Witnesses described it as both terrifying and sublime, stone alive with fire, sky alive with voice. Yet even in silence the towers command reverence. They do not need to move. They do not need to speak. Their presence alone reminds us of the immensity we forget. To look up their sides is to be reminded of our own smallness, our own fleeting span of years. They are not ruins, for they have not fallen. They are not monuments, for they were not raised in memory. They are something else entirely. Perhaps they are thresholds, not of space, but of perception. To stand before them is to feel the thinness of the veil, to sense that what we call the sky is not distant, but close enough to be drawn down into stone. And so the towers wait. Centuries pass, empires rise and fall, the names of rulers fade into dust. Still the towers stand, watching the constellations wheel slowly above them. Moss thickens, storms roll past, silence grows heavy, yet they do not crumble. They do not surrender. Whispers tell us they are not finished, that one day, when the alignment returns, when stars and towers once again mirror one another in perfect symmetry, they will wake. Their carvings will glow, their resonance will rise, and once more they will draw down the sky, not as weapon, not as shield, but as reminder. Reminder that the heavens and the earth are not strangers, but one. Perhaps that is why they endure. Not to act, not to destroy, not to save, but to wait. To remind us of patience. To remind us that there are powers greater than our own haste. The silence itself can hold meaning. You step back and the plain stretches wide again. The towers rise behind you, immense, unblinking, eternal. They do not follow. They do not fade. They remain. And as night folds across the horizon, stars gather above, and for an instant, just an instant, you see the sky reflected in stone. The towers and the heavens become one vast mirror, and silence becomes song. Then the vision softens. The moss is dark again. The symbols sleep once more. The towers are only towers, and yet you feel their presence still. The silence of them lingers immense, patient. A silence not of emptiness, but of waiting. And so we leave them behind, walking across the plain, carrying with us reverence. Carrying with us the quiet knowing that some structures are not built to be used, but to be remembered. The towers remain, waiting beneath the constellations. Silent, eternal, watching. It begins with moonlight. A pale silver stretched thin across the land, glimmering like breath upon glass. The plain is still, the night is hushed, and yet through this silence there winds a river. It moves softly, its current gliding like silk, shimmering beneath the constellations. The water is not only water, it is mirror, memory, and dream. To look upon it is to see not only the stars above, but the shadows of ages drifting within its depths. It is said this river did not flow with water alone. Its current carried remembrance, whispers of those who once stood upon its banks, echoes of voices long dissolved. Some called it a river of souls, others a river of time, yet most simply bowed their heads when they spoke of it, for to name it too directly was to invite its silence into your own chest. Along its banks, stones rise, carved with faint and fading symbols. They are not letters in any tongue we know, but shapes that resemble boats. Boats with no oars, no sails, no place for rower or captain. Some tilt upward as though they were not meant for water at all, but for the sky. Others seem to spiral, curving like galaxies as though meant to cross not distance but time. To walk beside them is to feel as though the river itself was a crossing, not of land but of worlds. It is said that rituals were once performed here. At night, when the river shimmered most brightly, people gathered upon its edge. They carried lanterns carved from stone, hollowed to cradle small flames. They sang in languages now dissolved, voices low and trembling, rising and falling with the rhythm of the current. Each flame was set gently upon the water, and the river carried them away. Hundreds of tiny lights drifting, their reflections doubling upon the silver surface. From afar, it would have seemed as though the stars themselves had descended, floating upon the dark water, returning once more to their source. The songs are gone now. The lanterns are dust. The language has faded, but the river remembers. Every ripple carries their echoes. Every curve of current hums with something just beyond hearing. If you listen closely, not with ears, but with breath, you might feel it. A low resonance, as though the water itself were chanting, carrying voices through centuries. Step to its edge, and you see your own reflection, faint and shimmering, yet it is not only yours. Other faces seem to hover, blurred, half-formed. Shadows of those who came before, shadows of those yet to come. They ripple and fade, returning to darkness, leaving only your image, your breath, your wonder. It is said some who entered the river never returned. They stepped into the current, and instead of being swept downstream, they vanished, as though carried elsewhere beyond time, beyond the world we know. Some believed they were chosen, lifted into another layer of existence. Others feared they were lost, dissolved into the endless dark. Yet always the river kept flowing, silent, patient, carrying its secret with it. We follow its course. The banks narrow, the current deepens. The silver shimmer fades into darker hues. The starlight swallowed by shadow. Here the water seems heavier, less like liquid, more like breath condensed into form. It moves slowly as though resisting itself. The carvings upon the stones become fewer, then vanish altogether, replaced only by smooth surfaces worn by centuries. It feels as though the river itself is retreating, pulling inward into places we cannot follow. And yet, even here its presence hums. It is not a sound, but a sensation. A weight that settles in the chest, a soft ache in the ribs, a reminder that what flows here is not only water, but memory itself. Perhaps that is why it grows darker. Not because the starlight fails, but because memory deepens. To drift upon this current is to drift not outward, but inward, into chambers of the self rarely entered, into silences too deep for words. The river bends toward the horizon, and with it, your thoughts bend inward until you are no longer certain whether you are walking beside the water, or whether the water is flowing within you. Whispers tell us that the river has no true source and no true mouth. It begins everywhere and ends nowhere, or perhaps it begins in silence and ends in silence. To step into it is not to travel outward, but to journey into the folds of your own breath, your own forgotten chambers of remembrance. It is said that once, during the height of summer, when the air was thick and the stars burned brightest, the river grew so luminous that those who gazed upon it saw not only their past but their future, entire lives unrolled like scrolls reflected upon the surface. Some returned from that night trembling, unable to bear what they had seen. Others left with serenity, whispering that they had finally understood. But in the morning the river was dark again, carrying only the soft shimmer of dawn. Now as you linger at its edge, the current grows quieter. Its silver fades, its reflection dims until what remains is only darkness deep and unbroken. The stars above are swallowed in its depths. The carvings upon the banks vanish. The water moves like shadow itself, carrying no reflection, no light, no sound. Perhaps this is the river's truest form, not silver, not luminous, but silent. Perhaps it does not exist to reveal but to carry, to hold memory until the world is ready once more to listen. And so you stand in stillness, the hush of night pressing close, the river flowing beside you. You cannot see where it leads. You cannot measure its depth. You only know that it continues, bending into horizons unseen, carrying shadows that are not lost, only hidden. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you feel yourself drifting, not outward but inward, not along the land, but through the chambers of your own silence. The river does not move away from you. It moves into you until your breath feels like its current, until your heartbeat feels like its ripple. And when you open your eyes again, the water is gone. The bank is empty. Only grass rustles in the wind. Only stars hang above. Only silence remains. Perhaps the river was never water at all. Perhaps it was memory itself, flowing, shimmering, darkening, vanishing. Perhaps it exists still, waiting not upon the land but within us, waiting for those who are still enough to listen. The night deepens, the silence grows vast, and you are left floating, unmoored, as though the river has carried you not outward but inward, into the quietest chambers of remembrance. It begins with a shimmer, a faint light gliding across the plains as though moonlight itself had chosen a place to rest. When the air is still and the night is clear, wanderers speak of seeing the faint outline of a structure rising from the horizon, a palace that no longer exists, but lingers like breath upon glass. Its walls are gone, its towers are ash, yet its memory floats in the silence, suspended between grandeur and nothingness. It is said this palace was once the jewel of an empire, built not merely of stone but of marble so pale it seemed carved from light itself. Its ceilings stretched like heavens, so high that clouds seemed to gather beneath their arches. Mirrors lined its corridors, polished so finely that they did not only reflect faces, they reflected the moon, the stars, the very breath of night. To walk its halls was to walk within the sky itself, every step guided by constellations and silver light. But beauty is fragile. Its story does not end in splendor but in flame. One night, no one remembers precisely when, the palace burned. Fire swept through its chambers, devouring wood, cracking marble, consuming tapestries and thrones alike. It is said the blaze was so vast that the plains for miles around glowed as though lit by a second sun. When dawn came, nothing remained. Only columns of smoke drifting endlessly, twisting into the morning sky. And yet, even now, the palace lingers. Step onto the plain and close your eyes, and you may hear it. Faint echoes of footsteps along corridors that no longer stand. The creak of a great door swinging upon hinges lost to time, a sigh of silk across marble floors. The faint hum of voices in chambers where no roof remains. Whispers tell us that one step upon these grounds can awaken centuries. For though the fire consumed the walls, it could not consume the memory of grandeur. The earth itself seems to hold it, breathing it back into the night for those who dare to listen. Some travelers describe feeling the weight of presence as though hundreds still linger around them. Courtiers, musicians, scribes, moving in silence through halls built now of shadow. Others claim to have glimpsed glimmers of light, flashes of mirrors reflecting a moon no longer visible, as though fragments of the palace were still alive, flickering between worlds. What was the fire? Was it an accident, an ember fallen, a careless flame? Was it the vengeance of conquerors, determined to erase not just the body of a people but their crown of light? Or was it decree, an ending chosen as though the palace itself knew its grandeur could not endure? Some legends say the flames did not destroy but transformed, carrying the palace upward into smoke so that it could remain forever untouchable. Lingering only as memory, we breathe deeply and the air tastes faintly of ash. Not the ash of destruction, but the ash of incense, of something once sacred, now diffused into silence. Each inhalation carries with it the ghost of grandeur. Each exhalation releases it, dissolving into the night once more. Walk further and you find the outlines of its chambers still etched into the soil. A courtyard where fountains once leapt, now only circles of stone half buried in grass. A grand stairway that rose into nothing, each step broken but still reaching toward the heavens. Fragments of marble columns lie scattered, their surfaces cracked yet still veined with silver light, and among them blackened stones, remnants of the fire, remnants of silence. It is said that when the wind is soft, the smoke still rises. Not from flame, but from memory, thin trails that curl upward into the stars, carrying with them the scent of burning cedar and silks, the sound of voices dissolving into cries, the echo of grandeur vanishing into silence. Some believe the smoke is the palace itself, transformed, eternal, still climbing into the sky, refusing to fall. Yet to linger here is not to mourn, it is to wonder, to ask what it means for beauty to vanish and whether vanishing is truly loss. For in the stillness of the plain, the palace feels more present in its absence than it ever might have in its marble walls. Its grandeur now exists not in stone, but in the imagination of those who remember, or of those who dream. Perhaps that is why it lingers. Because true splendor is too vast for walls, too fragile for permanence. Perhaps it was never meant to be touched, but only to be glimpsed like moonlight upon water, like smoke dissolving into air. You pause in the silence, and for a moment, you see it. The halls rise, faint but shimmering, arches curving into the night sky, mirrors gleam, catching the breath of the moon. Light dances across marble floors. The palace is whole again, vibrant, alive. You step forward and your footsteps echo softly, though no stone lies beneath. A corridor stretches before you, filled with shadows that move like courtiers. You lift your head, and a ceiling of light unfurls above, but when you blink, it is gone. Smoke curls across the plain. The grass rustles in the wind. The silence folds itself close again. Perhaps the palace is not gone at all. Perhaps it has simply chosen another form, no longer stone and marble, but memory and smoke, presence and silence. Perhaps it survives only in dream, waiting for those who breathe deeply enough to enter its halls once more. The night deepens, and the air cools. Smoke thins into nothing. Stars scatter across the horizon, and the plain is bare once more. The palace dissolves again into silence, leaving you with only the ache of grandeur vanished, the hush of what cannot be rebuilt. And yet you carry it, not in your hands, not in your eyes, but in your breath. The palace lingers in you as smoke lingers in air, as memory lingers in silence. Perhaps this is its true form, no longer a monument to be seen, but a dream to be carried. A reminder that splendor is fragile, that fire is final, and yet that nothing beautiful is ever entirely lost. For some structures are not built to remain. They are built to linger, to dissolve, to haunt the silence long after they are gone. The palace drifts once more into memory. The smoke fades into the night air, and you stand breathing the quiet of the plain, suspended between grandeur and nothingness. It begins not with thunder, but with silence, a silence too deep, too poised as though waiting for something vast to stir. The plain stretches wide, the night hangs heavy, and the stars above seem to lean closer, listening. In this hush, buried beneath layers of time and memory, there lingers a whisper of a machine, vast and luminous, that captured the breath of storms. It is said this machine was no ordinary creation. It was not forged of gears and cogs as we know them, nor driven by fire or by wheel. It was something stranger, quieter, more immense. Its body was said to gleam like a dome of glass, its spires catching the sky, its veins coursing not with iron but with light itself. Some called it a gift, others a curse. Some claimed it healed, drawing illness from the body as the river draws silt from stone. Others swore it destroyed, releasing bolts of silence that could crumble walls, halt armies, erase what stood before it. Yet most spoke of it only in whispers, as though naming it aloud might call it back. Fragments remain, carvings upon stone, faint and fractured, showing towers rising like reeds, each crowned with arcs of light. A scroll weathered into near ash describing domes that hum without sound, fed by the breath of storms. Broken artifacts unearthed from the soil, shards of metal too light for their size, fragments etched with spirals of thundercloud and flame. None of these are whole, none complete, yet together they paint the shadow of something immense. Imagine it, a machine that drank the sky. When storms rolled across the plains, lightning flashing, thunder breaking, the machine is said to awaken. Silent yet alive, its surfaces shimmered with pale fire. Arcs of light slid across its domes, currents coursed through its towers, not striking, not burning, but gathering. As though the storm itself was being drawn inward, inhaled into a body of stone and glass. It is said the hum could be felt more than heard. Standing nearby, one's chest would vibrate with it, the bones themselves trembling. The hair upon the skin would rise, not in fear, but in reverence, as though touched by an unseen hand. Animals fell silent. The wind paused. The world seemed to wait as the machine drank its fill. And what then? Some legends say the energy was released gently, flowing into rivers, into fields, into the very soil, so that crops grew taller, sickness lessened, nights glowed with quiet warmth. A healer, a guardian, a silent ally. Other tales turn darker. They speak of cities swallowed in silence. Their towers collapsed in an instant, their people vanished. They speak of fire without flame, destruction without noise, an ending so sudden it was said only shadows remained, etched faintly upon walls. A weapon, then. A forbidden art, but which was true? Perhaps both. Perhaps the machine was neither good nor ill, but simply power, waiting to be shaped, a mirror to the will of those who commanded it. And so we drift deeper into its mystery. You stand in the ruins where some claim it once rose. The soil is barren here, cracked as though scorched by a fire that left no ash. Stones lie scattered, yet none bear the marks of fire or sword. A few are etched with spirals, lightning coiled into circles, clouds folded into arcs. Touch one, and it feels faintly warm, as though it has never fully cooled. The air itself hums with absence, like an echo stretched thin. Whispers tell us that those who wander too near hear the machine still, not in sound but in dream. They wake in the night, heart pounding, skin tingling, certain they felt a current pass through them, soft as breath. Some see flashes of light behind their eyes, visions of towers glowing, domes alive with energy. Others wake with tears, whispering that they saw not destruction but healing, that they felt a weight lifted from their chest, a silence inside them replaced by peace. What is it then? Divine knowledge? Forbidden art? A memory we are not meant to reclaim? Some say the machine was never truly destroyed, that when the storms grew too strong, when the balance tipped too far, it vanished, folded back into the silence from which it came, waiting perhaps until the world is ready again to hold its power. Others believe it still hums, hidden deep beneath the soil, its light coursing unseen, feeding roots, feeding rivers, feeding the breath of the earth itself, not lost but buried, not ended but transformed. Perhaps it is still with us every time a storm breaks. Perhaps every flash of lightning, every roll of thunder is its voice reminding us of what once was. You close your eyes and imagine it, a night thick with clouds, winds circling, the first bolt of lightning splitting the sky. The machine awakens, silent but alive. Its domes shimmer, its towers blaze without flame. Arcs of pale fire slip across its surface, weaving patterns that mirror constellations. The air trembles, your chest hums, your breath slows. You feel both fear and awe, both danger and promise, and then silence. The storm is gone. The clouds dissolve. The stars return clear and sharp. The machine is still, its light fading, its hum withdrawing as though it had simply borrowed the breath of the storm, only to return it in quiet. But when your eyes open again, there is nothing. Only earth, only shadow, only silence. Perhaps that is the machine's true gift. Not to endure, not to be claimed, but to remind us. To remind us that power and silence are bound. That knowledge can heal or destroy, depending on the hands that guide it. That storms are not only chaos, but breath, waiting to be drawn down, and so we leave it here lingering only in folklore, in fragments, in whispers. The machine of quiet lightning. The hum that once coursed through the veins of empire. We walk away, and silence deepens. The night presses close. The stars flicker softly overhead, and we are left with a single fragile question. Were these sparks of divine knowledge, or the remnants of a forbidden art? It begins with the sound of a shovel cutting into earth, a slow, steady rhythm, breaking silence that has lain unbroken for centuries. The air is heavy, the sky dim with gathering dusk, and each movement of soil releases not only dust but memory. Excavation is not merely digging, it is listening. listening to what the ground has held in silence, to what has waited patiently, veiled beneath layers of time. And then, beneath the soil, a shape appears. At first it is only a shard, curved, pale against the darkness of earth. Then, little by little, the form reveals itself. A face, expressionless, unblinking, a mask. Its surface is worn, cracked along the cheek, yet its presence is undeniable. It gazes upward with eyes that do not see, and yet you feel seen. Its mouth is sealed, lips closed forever in silence. As though guarding secrets it refuses to release. It is said masks are both veil and mirror. They hide, but they also reveal. They are protection, but also proclamation. What does this mask reveal? Its emptiness unsettles. Its silence lingers. Was it meant to be worn? Pressed against the face of a living ruler, transforming flesh into icon? Or was it never meant for human skin at all? An object of fear and idol. A reminder that power itself wears a face beyond the human. Legends whisper of rulers who never aged, whose countenances never changed, who sat upon thrones decade after decade, their faces hidden beneath stone or gold. Were these masks? Were they tools of illusion, meant to preserve the image of eternal rule? Or were they symbols declaring that the ruler was no longer man or woman, but something beyond? Veiled in silence, clothed in eternity. This mask before us is cracked, yet its gaze is intact. Look into its eyes, and you sense not emptiness, but weight, a presence that chills the skin. As though the mask has seen more than it was ever meant to. As though it carries the memory of a face that once lay beneath. The power, the fear, the silence. Some say such masks were buried not with the body, but with the soul. That when flesh faded, the mask absorbed what lingered. A vessel for spirit, a prison for power. To disturb it, to raise it from the soil, is not simply to uncover stone, it is to awaken what lies within. And so those who handle it speak softly, as though afraid the mask itself might hear. They do not look long into its eyes, for the longer one stares, the more one feels the gaze is returned. We linger in this hush. The mask rests upon a cloth, lifted gently from the soil. Its expression is calm, eternal, yet the air around it has changed. The wind stirs where none stirred before. A faint chill spreads across the plain. The silence deepens, heavy and watchful. It is as though the mask has brought with it the atmosphere of another age, the hush of a throne room, the dread of a crowd gazing upon a ruler they could never truly see. It is said the mouth of such masks was sealed for a reason, not merely to mimic silence, but to contain it, to remind all who gazed upon it that power does not speak, it simply is. Some masks bore no opening at all, suffocating those who wore them, transforming them from breathing flesh into still symbols, a ritual death endured in life so that the ruler became less person and more presence. What power lingers in silence? Perhaps the mask reminds us that authority is not always loud, not always spoken. Sometimes it is the unblinking gaze, the sealed lips, the face that reveals nothing. To look upon such a visage is to be reminded of your own frailty, your own impermanence. The mask endures while the body fades, and fade it did. The ruler whose face once lay beneath this mask has long dissolved into soil. Their bones are dust, their breath returned to the wind. But the mask remains, unblinking, unbroken, eternal. Power may dissolve, empires may vanish, yet symbols endure. Symbols wait. You lift it gently, and for an instant you feel the weight of its silence. Heavy, though not in mass. Heavy in presence. You sense the ache of centuries compressed into its hollow form. You imagine the moment it was lowered onto flesh. The breath within growing shallow, the eyes behind closing forever. You imagine the gaze of a crowd, fearful, reverent, watching a ruler become more than human, watching them become mask. Perhaps that is why the unease lingers. Because in its hollow gaze we see not only the face of another, but the shadow of ourselves, the desire to endure beyond breath, the fear of fading, the hunger for silence that outlives words. Whispers tell us that when night deepens, those who keep the mask nearby hear faint sounds. A breath slow and steady. A voice low and muffled, though no lips move. Some claim the eyes glow faintly, reflecting starlight even when none is near. Others insist they see their own face upon it when they stare too long, as though the mask is always searching for another to inhabit, another to wear. But tonight, it rests. Still silent, broken only by a single crack and yet whole enough to unsettle. You lower it once more onto the earth. The soil embraces it, swallowing its edges, reclaiming it. The air grows lighter. The silence lifts, and yet something remains. a chill along the spine, an unease that lingers even after the mask is no longer visible. Perhaps that is the true power of the mask, not to be worn, not to be worshipped, but to remind. To remind us that power lingers long after the body fades, that silence endures longer than words, that some faces are not meant to meet ours, and yet when they do, we cannot forget. And so the excavation ends. The soil closes again. The mask vanishes back into the earth, where it will wait for another hand, another age, another breath to uncover it. The night deepens. The silence returns. And we are left only with the unease of having looked into a gaze that was not meant to meet ours. It begins at the edge of silence, where the horizon dissolves into night. A faint glimmer appears, not torchlight, not fire, but something softer, more celestial. You walk toward it across plains washed in starlight, and as you draw near, you see walls rising where no walls should be. A city, vast and strange, its outlines shifting as though woven of both stone and sky. It is said this city did not remain fixed. Its streets shifted with the constellations. Its walls moved like tides, swelling and receding with rhythms too vast for human measure. To arrive was to glimpse a wonder, and yet to wake was to find it gone, carried elsewhere by forces unseen. Some whispered it was built upon the breath of the stars, tethered not to earth but to heaven itself. Others said it was alive, a city with pulse and breath, choosing where and when to reveal itself. Step softly into its alleys, and the air feels different. The stones beneath your feet seem to hum faintly, as though remembering the countless footsteps that once passed here. The walls shimmer, their surfaces etched with patterns of stars shifting as you move. Constellations rearranging themselves like living maps. Shadows linger in doorways, though no figures pass. Windows glow faintly, though no flame burns. It is as if the city itself is dreaming, and you have wandered into its dream. Travelers who spoke of this place never told the same story twice. One described a tower so tall it vanished into constellations, its summit crowned with fire that moved like water. Another spoke of bridges that stretched into nothingness, crossing gulfs of air and light. Still another recalled a square where every stone glowed as though alive, pulsing with rhythm like the heartbeat of the city itself. None could agree on its shape, its size, its location, only on its strangeness, its beauty, its impermanence. Legends say those who linger too long within its walls lose their sense of time. Nights fold into nights, stars wheel and shift, yet the city remains luminous, unbroken. And when at last one leaves, stepping beyond its shifting gates, the world feels altered. Days missing, months lost, sometimes years. As though the city itself had borrowed their time, carrying it away along with its own wandering walls. We move deeper now, through phantom alleys where silence flows like a river. The air hums with rhythm, as though unseen musicians play in distant chambers. Each corner seems alive, each turn guiding us further, not into space but into memory. You sense that the city does not exist in the way others do. It is not built of stone alone, but of remembrance and starlight, of echoes and impermanence. At last we reach the square. It is vast, open, quiet, paved with stones that glimmer faintly as though veined with silver. Stand at its center, and the constellations above seem to align directly with the patterns below. The stars mirror the stones. The stones mirror the stars until it is impossible to tell which is reflection and which is source. For a moment it feels as though the heavens and the earth are one, joined in a symmetry too perfect to endure. But then, slowly, the city shifts. The walls waver, their outlines dissolving into mist. The alleys blur, their hum fading into silence. The square itself begins to tremble, its stones shimmering as though slipping away. You blink and towers vanish. You turn and the bridges dissolve. The city is drifting, its presence fading, its body carried elsewhere by forces unseen. And when the last echo fades, you are left standing alone beneath the stars. No walls, no towers, no square. Only the plain, wide and silent, the horizon empty once more. It is said the city never truly leaves. It only moves, shifting just beyond sight, wandering across the fabric of night. Perhaps it is still there, waiting in another fold of the world, hidden until the constellations align once again. Or perhaps it was never truly a place at all, but a vision, a reminder, a dream gifted to those who wander far enough into silence. Some wonders are not meant to be held. They are meant only to be glimpsed, to leave behind a trace of awe, a breath of impermanence, to remind us that not all beauty is ours to claim. And so the city vanishes as softly as it came. The stars above burn steadily. The plain stretches quiet and wide. The night continues. Yet within you, the rhythm of its streets lingers, faint as a heartbeat, a memory of walls that walked with stars, of alleys alive with silence, of a square where heaven and earth became one. Perhaps it will return. Perhaps you will see it again on another night in another life. Or perhaps the city was never truly elsewhere, but always here, wandering not across plains, but across the hidden corridors of the soul. The silence deepens. The stars wheel overhead, and the city drifts once more into the starlit horizon, vanishing into wonder, leaving only the hush of impermanence behind.